What it do, everybody? It's your boy King Crowder back again with another edition of History You May Not Know and Things That Are Not Taught in Detail for Sure. Today's lesson is about a former House Speaker known as Thaddeus Stevens of Pennsylvania and how he was a champion of black rights when it was very uncomfortable to be. He was an abolitionist born in Danville, Vermont, April 4th, 1792. He was the second of four children and boys of the honor of a Polish general who served in the American Revolutionary. His dad's first name was Thaddeus, and he changed his son's last name to be more susceptible in American society. If you did not know back then, racism was very staunch even for whites. If you were not an Anglo-Saxon American, you were discriminated against. Italians and them all had to assimilate into traditional American society as they felt. His parents were both Baptists in their religion, as Christianity, from Massachusetts. Thaddeus was born into a clubfoot, which means he was seen as the same judgment for his parents' sins. His older brother was the same, conducted both feet, and his father was born. Remember, they grew up in a rural town, very poor, below working class community, and they began to move up quickly as he moved to Pennsylvania as a young man and became a successful attorney. Remember, back then, it didn't require much for you guys to become a successful attorney. It wasn't law school. It was how you self-educated yourself and went after this. He asserted himself immediately into politics. He was a leader in the anti-Magic Party, and he was a Freemason in the United States going against evil conspiracy against the House of Representatives. He was an advocate for free education. However, financial setbacks caused him to move his practice to a larger city in Lancaster. When he decided to go against the parties and use his political outrage to speak against what injustices we know, he began to struggle to make a living. So he had to farm to increase his aid, even allow his children to improve his aid and work with him. In 1807, they had to move back to his home state of Pecan, Vermont, in which he enrolled young Thaddeus in grammar school. He wanted to give his children a very formal education. After graduating, him enrolling himself in the University of Vermont, he began to do his studies, but he said he had to suspend his studies because the War of 1812 came on. He enrolled in his sophomore year at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, where he was a stellar academician. He was not elected to become any of the leadership due to his views at one point. Mr. Stevens went to Dartmouth and was chosen as the commencement speaker due to his upbringing, humble beginnings, and what he had to overcome. To this day, he is known as one of the most fiery abolitionists. Abolitionist is someone who champions black rights, understood that black Americans at this time deserved their freedoms, and was an advocate for civil rights. He was a Civil War era radical Republican. It may catch people off guard, but Republicans at this time, most of the black Americans were, and they were the one that posted single legislations to ensure black were equal. The Democrats were the Southern Party, and they were the anti-black ones, championing and speaking of some of the nations we know. Even though all of these champion beliefs went about, we knew Mr. Stevens, wanted to show how ungraceful these attitudes towards black Americans, the lectures, the way we discriminate against him. He was so common to tell people that they deserve their own rights. Even after Abraham Lincoln's assassination, Mr. Sleeman came into conflict and showed his restoration to succeed when that ideology was prevalent in the South. He went across and told people, why do we need to support this movement? Americans need to be one unit, one sound, one voice. We already know that the South has its own belief system, and they want to champion black Americans having the same rights and speeches as others. Stevens proposed the 14th Amendment. He went into how they deserve to have their own citizenship. They deserve anybody born in America is born this way, and that Negro boy needs to be the same as white blood. Remember, at this time, race was such a common thing. The white supremacist ideology and speaking against it was such a huge deal. He was an abolitionist when it was uncomfortable to be. His fallen health made him be buried in a Negro cemetery just because the whites in the area did not want him. Remember, he was a staunch believer in his religion, his philosophy, and his thinking. Mr. Stevens was a champion for black rights, speaking up for how unity, organization, and self-sufficiency need to be had in this country. Mr. Stevens should be given some of his flowers because he stood up when it was uncomfortable to stand up for rights at this time. He was an abolitionist, he was a speaker, he was a leader, he was an innovator, and he stood on his belief systems. Shout out to Mr. Stevens. Thank you for what you did for us, sir. You have not been given your flowers as you should, but you are an icon, a leader, and a trailblazer among us. You grew up in the most integrated city, integrated town, even though you tried and failed in multiple ways. Mr. Stevens, thank you for your work as an abolitionist and what you did for our community. It's your boy, King Crowder. Check him back out again. Coming to you with a lesson. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching. Until next time, peace.